new capacity to create wealth. This famous quote by Peter Drucker in 1959 is time-tested and is relevant even today. With India being the third largest startup ecosystem globally and Bangalore getting the honors at the national level, the startup industry is coming of age. In these interesting and relevant times, DERBI Foundation is clocking and celebrating 5 years. Today's event is not only celebration of our 5 years of active startup engagement in the ecosystem, but also it's a symbolic effort to demonstrate the collective synergy of the ecosystem. More power to these synergies. We have a short video to sum up the story of the genesis and the mission of DERBI Foundation. Mr. M.N. Vidyashankar, Chairman Advisory Board, DERBI Foundation, for a welcome address, a few lines of introduction. M.N.V. sir is an administrative veteran and has played pivotal roles in transforming organizations. Sir not only chairs our advisory board, but is mentoring DERBI at a strategic level. Sir, now I request you to kindly welcome today's gathering.
Distinguished guests, august members of the audience, startups, would-be unicorns, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and a very warm welcome to you to this very special evening covering 5 years of DERBI Foundation. What we see in the country today is that India is booming with startups. Close to about 70,000 startups as of now. We had 44 unicorns last year, I'm talking of the calendar year, and we produced 1 unicorn every 8.4 days last year. We have 13 unicorns this year between January and March, in fact as of yesterday, giving us a count of close to about 6.3 days we have 1 unicorn. So what we are seeing is we are on the cusp of startup revolution. In DERBI Foundation currently, We are focusing on healthcare and health tech devices, focusing through incubation, through ideation, through acceleration, and scaling up. As of now, we have reached out to close to about 2,300 entrepreneurs, and we have funded about 28 plus startups during these 5 years of our baby steps that we have taken. We are fully aware that the startup space, the way it's going on in the country, the way we see the ecosystem, only the if you look at the way things are going on, what we see is that it's a very mature ecosystem with investors, mentors, corporates, and so on. So we have done our best to ensure that we try to come out with the best possible ecosystem. And I must say that we have created a reasonably mature ecosystem with investors, hospitals, mentors as a part of the ecosystem. We in DERBI Foundation constantly, learn. We constantly try to evolve ourselves. We constantly try to redefine success in such a way that we meet the requirements of startups in a very big way. In fact, today's celebration is a celebration for startups who have deviated from the normal 9 to 5 routine and have deviated into a space which is an off-grid space. We also have close to about 70 to 80 startups who are displaying their products here. My request to each one of you is to spend some time with them, primarily because your word of encouragement is going to help a lot of startups. I'm sure they will jumpstart their imaginations by your words of encouragement. We are also launching the normal read that you normally have. I can also assure you that it will be a refreshing escape from the usual read that you have, and it will be a perfect one for you to live it in during your laid-back evenings. I feel extremely privileged and honored to welcome Mr. T.C. Meenakshi Sundaram, founder and vice chairman, Shirade Ventures. He is an icon of knowledge, experience, inspiration to all of us. His wise counsel and energy are always working towards connecting young minds to strive towards success and achievement. Sometimes all we need in this kind of an event is an awesome guest to make you feel complete. Delighted to welcome you, sir. I am profoundly delighted to welcome Dr. Premchand Sagar, Vice Chairman, Dayanand Sagar Institutions, and Promoter Director, DERBI Foundation. He is an epitome of professionalism and embodiment of compassion, a man of principles and a symbol of probity. Welcoming you, sir, for your leadership, for being a role model and being an amazing guide to all of us. Equally delighted to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Suhas Gopinath, founder and CEO, Globus. And a member of National Export Advisory Committee on Innovation, Incubation, Technology and Entrepreneurship, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Needless to say, he is one of the most talented and resourceful personalities in the tech space today, not in the state, but in the country. We have waited for you for quite some time to have you amongst us. Lovely having you amongst us, and a warm welcome to you. Equally excited to welcome Mr. Rohan Premsagar, whose commitment to DERBI Foundation knows absolutely no bounds and has steadfastly supported all these years with the zeal of a machinery. We value the presence of all the august members present in this evening, present in this audience, the startups, corporates, industry associations, investors, and all the players in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are truly humbled and honored to have you and have this elite gathering amongst us. Have a very enjoyable evening, but my request to you once again, please do spend some time with these startups. In fact, I must also tell you, these startups have come from 9 different states from the country. We have startups from Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and many other states, and of course, none from Hyderabad. Have an enjoyable evening.
Thank you, sir, for the welcome address. Startup ecosystem is an unique industry by itself which thrives on synergies of all the stakeholders. In a short span of 5 years, it's been possible for DERBI Foundation to create an impact, thanks to the numerous organizations and individuals who have been with us in our journey. We have captured a journey and memories in the form of a coffee table book titled DERBI at 5. I request all the guests of honor to come on stage to Can I please request Mr. TCM and Mr. Suhas to release the coffee table book DERBI at 5 and hand over the copy to Dr. Sagar.
It's a real coffee table book. Very nice.
I request all the guests of honor on the stage to hold the book for a photo op.
What's the camera, sir?
Thank you all so much. Here is the glimpse of DERBI at 5 for all of us. Before I request Mr. T.C. Meenakshi Sundaram, our guest of honor for today's evening, to deliver his talk, it's my pleasure to briefly introduce him. Mr. TCM is an industry veteran with close to 4 decades of experience in strategic roles in both corporations and startups. He has a rare blend of qualified expertise as a chartered accountant and a keen investor and mentor for deep tech startups. I would now invite Mr. T.C. Meenakshi Sundaram, founder and vice chairman, Chirate Ventures India Advisors, to deliver the special address for today.
Thank you. Dr. Sagar and other Suhas and other guests out here. I was introduced as somebody with close to 4 decades of experience, and in a startup world, that's actually a liability, right? Because the more somebody has experience, actually they know what is not possible, right? What we look for is actually the fearlessness of not knowing what's not possible. That's when the young entrepreneurs, and today, in fact, one of the companies that we are backing, this will possibly be the youngest entrepreneur we are backing, is 20-year-old, still in the 3rd year of the college, not from an IIT or a branded college. It's from a tier 2 town in northern India, and they are working on autonomous vehicle, right? And taking on companies which are in the Western world possibly raised billions of dollars, right? This is what we get excited about, right? And when I started my VC journey, or even when I started my career, actually the word startup was not even known. And now I look back, and I started my career as part of Wipro, which was a very small company, especially in the technology world. When I joined, actually their Vanaspati business was 5 times bigger than the technology business. Wipro Technologies was just 10 crores business at that time in '94. And we used to grow at 100% per year in the initial days, right? And that was the excitement that actually created a lot of entrepreneurs who later went on and started various companies or headed Indian operations of global companies. And some of them went on to start companies in US. That was the entrepreneurship which I don't think most of us even understood the term at that point in time, until I actually moved to the VC side after over 15 years in Wipro. And that was in the first wave of internet boom and bust, as I would call it, where eyeballs were getting valued, right? And I still remember one entrepreneur come and say that, look, you know, my business is not about eyeballs, right? Eardrums are getting valued. That's because it was about music, right? That's how innovative people were trying to differentiate themselves and get valued. But to cut a long story short, then me and my partner Sudhir started ventures, right? That was 15 years ago. The first quarter, we had 67 companies. Today, every quarter, we see over 600 to 700 companies. So the number of startups that used to happen even 15 years ago to today, and you know, Mr. Vidyashankar was saying that there are 70,000 startups. Every year, there are about 7,000 to 8,000 startups which are getting started. And we get to see approximately 3,000 to 4,000 every year. And if I compare even 15 years to now, right, one of the important things that we have noticed, those days it used to be somebody with 10 plus years experience, mid to late 30s, who's an entrepreneur. And today, if you see, the average age has come down to mid 20s, with many of them just out of college. And one word to explain what we see, the excitement, is the fearlessness. Actually, they do not worry about the fact that they are taking on a challenge with, let us say, a global major like an Amazon, or an Indian major like a Reliance, or a Siemens, or a Philips, or Google. That's where they are trying to change the world. And this is something that got accelerated during COVID. In the last 2 years, and some of the professionals were notorious for not using technology, right? Many of them doctors who used to say that, look, I don't use technology, have actually started using technology in a substantially significant way. And hopefully, that's an irreversible trend. Or for that matter, some of the people like, you know, even rural India, which we see, farmers who are today using smartphones, using apps to be able to communicate with each other, post messages, ask questions and respond, take videos and then share it, like a Facebook, is very heartening. And today we have more than 800 million smartphone users. In the next 5 to 7 years, we expect actually smartphone users to cross over 1 billion. And that's a major driver of India's growth. What we see is as India goes towards 5 trillion economy and then 10 trillion economy, just as startup ecosystems, companies which are started in the last 15 years and the next maybe 5-10 years will contribute over 20% of India's GDP. So the basic value creation that's happening, job creation that's happening in the country substantially happens in startups who are actually eating everyone's lunch. Okay. Technology is changing a lot of stuff and also bringing in dramatic productivity improvement, dramatic lifestyle improvements. India's, doctor-patient ratio, all of us know, which is woefully inadequate, or the bed ratio is very poor. And 2 of the major metros, or 3 of the major metros struggled during the second wave of COVID, right? Which exposed how poor even these major metros in terms of managing things, and imagine other parts of the country. This cannot be solved in the traditional methodology. Only technology can solve. So to that extent, what DERBI is doing in terms of working closely with startups, in terms of working with health tech and healthcare startups is something phenomenal. And I also would like to share something, and we back a lot of seed stage companies, and we actually share 2 of the companies with DERBI, We Innovate and KB Calls, right? Very exciting companies. What this stage, which is from idea to developing a product or a solution and then getting it validated and then taking it to market, is the toughest period. Right? It's possibly where many of the entrepreneurs will be going through doubts as to whether it's going to work, doubts as to whether they are going to actually have money to pay the payroll for the end of the month, right? And at that time, whoever helps them, whether it is the mentors who have been put together by DERBI or by DERBI team, are doing a great service in terms of getting this small startups to actually thrive and then possibly grow into potentially future big trees when people like us can come and then start putting the necessary capital. There's a lot of talk about the unicorns, and that's actually a measure. And we do see that India being a very large market, we will have our share of unicorns, but I think unicorn is just a measure. Right? Most of the entrepreneurs we have dealt with, and many of them are several times past that milestone. They are on their way to IPOs, and some of them have already completed the IPO. When you deal with them, when you interact with them, we don't see actually they getting the airs about being unicorn or even personally being very wealthy. That's just a number, right? I think focus on what you are solving for, solve very big things, right? India as a country needs a lot of areas that still need to get solved. And what works in India will work in possibly 2/3 of the world, which requires it, right? Which can be replicated elsewhere. And that is a big market opportunity, not only for India, it has to go global. And that is something that I see that next 10, 20, 30 years, where Indian startup ecosystem will be a torchbearer, will be a market leader globally. Because one of the important things compared to, let us say, a country like China, which has also built a lot of startups, is that they had what's called the Great Firewall of China, right? Where the government protected the companies by not allowing global companies to come and compete. Whereas in India, most of the companies actually compete in a very, very free. Today, if you were to start anything on search, you have to compete with Google, right? Directly. There's no protection from the government. And that makes all other companies highly risky to global competition. and possibly make them much more competitive globally. And we have built in the last 30 or 40 years as an industry, a $200 billion industry in terms of IT CPO, which came from nothing today contributing a substantial portion of India's exports. And today's arbitrage is no more a cost arbitrage, it's a talent arbitrage. Nearly 70% of global 500, Fortune 500 or Fortune 2000, their R&Ds are in India. They will be the second largest center after their main home country. And that is a startup ecosystem that actually has been nurtured by Bangalore, which we are proud to be part of. And the joke that we speak about is that, you know, throw a stone in Bangalore today to fall on somebody associated with entrepreneurship, either an entrepreneur or somebody working with a startup or a VC or an angel or an incubator, right? And that's what creates this ecosystem. Though it has become expensive, though it has become very tough to live in, like we all know, we possibly spend 1.5 hours or 2 hours one way to commute from home to place of work and back. We might have forgotten that in COVID work from home scenarios, but I think those days are coming back very soon for us. But having said that, it is still very exciting where more and more companies are getting started here, more and more entrepreneurs and capital is flowing in here. It's an exciting time, and I wish DERBI 5 to add a zero to that in the next few decades, and not only the 28 companies, and I am sure you will one day talk about the unicorns that have come out of DERBI 5, and wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful talk. Our next guest of honor for the evening is Mr. Suhas Gopinath. He is not only a serial tech entrepreneur, but also is a member of many national and international forums, including National Export Advisory Committee on Innovation, Incubation, Technology and Entrepreneurship under GST, Government of India. Now, I request Mr. Suhas Gopinath, founder and CEO, Globals Inc., to deliver his special address for the evening.
It feels nice to be here. So, and therefore, Vidyashankar sir has been one of my guiding forces, and it's very nice, and it's an absolute privilege to share the dais with him. And for Lakshmi ma'am, I think the first time I got introduced with Anand Sagar College was when she invited me to a program called Coffee with CEO many years back to inspire the engineering students to opt for entrepreneurship. And so of course, it's nice to meet TCM sir and also interact with Sagar sir as well. You'll have to excuse my voice. Obviously, I'm under the weather. So it's probably the second event I'm attending in person after COVID, and the first one was to visit of a very interesting agri-tech incubator in Tumkur, SIT Tumkur. So I think I assume that there are representatives from SIT here. So it also feels very nice to be here to see many of the folks who are associated with entrepreneurship. It feels like an extended family function, and it feels very nice. So, of course, I started my career when I was 14 for the only fact that my father did not buy me a computer, and my first incubator then was a cyber cafe, and I had a barter deal with the cyber cafe owner that when he goes for his lunch break, I want to run the shop in the afternoon. So, all my school days, I was an extremely introvert guy, and with my school uniform, when I was in my 9th grade, I walk into this cyber cafe called Cyber Den, which was run by one Mr. Shubdev. So I went there and I told him that you shut down your shop. I see that your shop is not open in the lunch break. Is there any way that I could run the shop in the afternoon so that we could attract all the students who are coming from MS Ramaya Engineering College and Medical College to use your shop in the afternoon when you go for lunch, and in exchange I would use the internet for free of cost. So he kind of partially agreed, and he followed me until my house. He wanted to make sure that if there are any mouse or keyboard that's missing in the shop, he knows where exactly to come. So it was also kind of the lack of trust that existed then. And of course, every day after my school, I was in the cyber cafe. I had to lie to my mother that I had joined NCC in my school. I went to Air Force School because Dad was in defense. And my mother was very excited. Father was very excited that, okay, fine, he may join the armed forces. And until my class teacher calls me when I was in my 10th standard, when I had failed in my mathematics exam, indicating that your second son is horrible compared to your first son. Unfortunately, I had an elder brother who was like the blue-eyed boy in the school, and adding the pressure. And my mom stands next to me with the class teacher, and the class teacher is actually showing the marks card. And she tells that we didn't expect your son to fail in an exam, and board exam is about to near. And my mother is staring back at the teacher, and she tells that it's not the mistake of Suhas alone, it's a mistake of the school as well, because you put him into all kind of special classes and NCC, so how do you expect him to study? And then my teacher tells that I don't think he even has an NCC uniform. And to cut the story short, we walk back home all the way, she's crying, and she understands that she makes me confess that actually where I'm going. I tell that I'm going to a cyber cafe. And it was that time when internet was very new, and my mom was subscribing to all this women's magazine, parenting magazines, and she thinks that I'm consuming the wrong content on the internet, and she makes me swear on her head, telling that I should not go to the cyber cafe again, and I should focus on studies. And the example I gave was the world's richest man, Bill Gates, has not completed his studies, so why do you force me to complete mine? And she tells in Kannada that Aun jaat ka bere, nim jaat ka bere, you're in India, he's in US, so you cannot emulate him. And it's probably was the defining moment in my life where I chose to be an entrepreneur, and I still managed to continue my studies and still go to the cyber cafe. But I joined the Department of Science and Technologies, the National Expert Advisory Committee. It was called as Expert Advisory Committee then, and I joined when I was 24, so it's over a decade now where I've been with the committee and I've seen incubators. So it's out of the passion I had towards actually developing, or at least helping country develop their entrepreneurial ecosystem. And it was absolutely super exciting to see some of the amazing incubators, and especially DERBI, because there used to be a prejudice when I joined, where when applications used to come to apply for incubators, initially there was a natural bias for the institutions whose name would start with I, and I think ma'am was part of a last meeting, and I think we rejected most of the applications that came from there. So it was either because of the arrogance or ignorance on understanding the very basis of incubation itself. And I've seen why incubators fail is also one of the main reasons. At least I'm not very experienced, but at least with the incubators where I've interacted with, they consider themselves to be, of course, a glorified co-working space, offering cheap real estate or facilities to the incubators. But I strongly believe that incubator is probably the reason why an entrepreneur or a startup would succeed, and probably the reason why a startup would fail. And it's very, very important that incubators could go much beyond the emphasis on their own facilities, but also on across networking programs, interacting with entrepreneurs, interacting with failed entrepreneurs, so that the startup could actually very fast realize that it's okay to fail, and it's very important to pivot. So as TCM sir was mentioning, unfortunately in India, I think we use the funding as a benchmark, which is good. So, but I always feel that it's like the chef celebrating when he buys the ingredient, right? So it's also very important, because I come from a service company, so it's also very important that when you start punching in your first invoices, when you make the real money of your own from the services, the products, is also very important. So as sir mentioned, it's not just about the valuation, but it's also the purpose. So it's also the impact that, okay, are you really solving this problem? Is it very satisfying? So it's unfortunately we have all the media which is around us where we start pumping the entrepreneurs, and we sometimes even force them to become a unicorn. So I think the incubators, I think the incubators are the ones who should act as a guiding force and should also calibrate the expectation of the entrepreneurs. And of course, for the future of the incubation, where I've seen at least an excellent example across DERBI is that they're hyper-focused, or the focus is there. We've seen incubators that are actually agnostic to the technology, and when they're too very agnostic, I think it's very difficult for the startups to collaborate, and they lose a strategic advantage. So I always believe that if there are synergies amongst the startups, it's very important. So you have that. I mean, the incubator should build that cartel culture, right? So if you watch any of these cartel series on Netflix, you know that it's very, very important that if the startups are able to collaborate with each other, and sometimes in some of the incubators, we've also seen that the startups would actually merge with another startup because actually they feel that actually they are complementing each other, and it makes more sense for them to associate with each other and to scale. And incubators have one natural advantage is on behalf of the startups as a group buying. So at least the common resources is something they could actually group buy, which I have seen certain incubators who'd miss on that, and I think there's a massive potential for it. And of course, one very important, which of course most of you are also mentors, are associated with startups. I think in India we have that culture of being first mover. So I've seen from investors to mentors to incubators telling that, okay, I mean, I know this idea, but someone else is already doing it. So I think we should move away from that culture of being the first mover advantage towards last mover advantage. It's probably, I always keep giving examples that, is it possible that you could be the last search engine that the mankind would see? Like, for example, Google. Like, when I started to use internet, probably I used 9 other search engines before Google, and it's probably Google is the last search engine that we all would use today. So, or for example, Tesla is a classic example in the automobile, right? So, we had so many cars. We had, of course, billion-dollar car companies already that used to exist. But of course, Tesla is probably the last company that we would see, or at least one of the most successful in that one we would see. In India, we have Indigo Airlines, which is a classic example. So I think it's very, very important that if we are mentoring, if we are hand-holding entrepreneurs, we should still encourage them to do something in the competitive space. It's okay if it's hyper-competitive, as far as they could identify their advantage or the last one advantage. And it's extremely important for companies and startups to always stay extremely humble. So I was talking to somebody who was heading the marketing for Maggi. So I do not know if you followed the stats. So sales of Maggi in India has declined, and it's not because of AP noodles, or it's not because of a competition. It's because of a competition that they never had expected. It was because Swiggy and Zomato, because unmarried individuals, bachelors, who used to stack up Maggies at their home, so now would not need Maggi anymore. So to cook, they could order from Swiggy or Zomato. So it's all this unheard competition that you would have from garages is very scary. So it's always very, very important for startups and even for incubators to keep challenging their status quo always. And of course, with this, I want to end my talk, and I'm sure DERBI is doing an amazing job, because I'll be very honest, when I joined the committee, I was always pushing that DST should not have a policy where you need to have a host institution to start an incubator. I mean, the perception or the prejudice that I used to have was that when incubators are housed inside the universities or campuses, they may not succeed. Or the interaction or the collaboration with the outer world is confined. And of course, DERBI actually proved it to be very wrong, and it's absolutely very encouraging to see the way we've seen that, of course, this event itself is a testimony to see the, of course, collaboration of course Derby has built over the years. So with this, I would want to thank and I wish ma'am and the Derby team all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suhas, for the enlightening talk. Dr. D. Premachandra Sagar, Promoter Director, Derby Foundation, Vice Chairman, Dayanand Sagar Institutions, is a missionary and a man on a mission. Having been instrumental in exponentially scaling DSI, he is a firm believer and exponent in innovation and entrepreneurship. Derby Foundation is a classic example of how entrepreneurship promotes entrepreneurship and enables spin-offs in organizations. Sir, now I request you to kindly deliver your address for the evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Respected Vidya Shankar sir, Mr. Meenakshi Sundaram, Suhash Gopinath, Madam Lakshmi Jagannathan, were it not for her relentless pursuit to position Derby, I guess we would not have been here. You know, my role as a promoter was very limited. I mean, promoters invariably do not participate a lot. They generally, talk in monosyllables and expect great results. So, well, as this journey, we began this journey many, many years ago. I was a classified public man. I was a politician, who was thrust in. Probably, I lost my elections in Parliament, so I didn't know what to do. I fell out of my political masters, so which meant that, I had to go back and look at what do I do to make myself meaningful. And that's when we believed that, education is one area that we should focus strongly on, though my father, a barrister of law from the Gray's Inn, founded one. So this was a journey that when we started on, we were a Tier 3 institution to begin with. Now, Tier 3 institutions have this great opportunity that they can migrate up. An average institution can go on to be a fair institution, from a fair to a good institution, and when you become good, you aspire to become great. I mean, that's where we began this journey. When the Dayanand Sagar institutions, the College of Engineering, had its programs, and then we saw, brilliant young students. The world was changing. I mean, the world had changed. It was no longer wisdom that was in the hands of those who had experience. The technology world, the problems of the Y2K, the new world, the world of technology came in, and that's when we understood that the present has to be destroyed to bring in the future. So that's when we would look across and say, for me the challenge was, how do you make my students, essentially as the custodian of young minds, how do you make them involved, and how do you make them, active to handle the world ahead? And that's when, Lakshmi, who was handling, she was a technologist in business school. So what do we do? I mean, at the end of it, most of the activities happen with technology as the base. So we started the e-cell, and I guess, half-heartedly, she would persuade me and said, look, we need to do the e-cell. I said, okay, you can go on to do the e-cell. And then the IEDC happened, and then, of course, Derby happened. And over this point of time, the institutions also started to dream big, while we had initially the challenges of having to work under a central university, thanks to the state of Karnataka, the private universities started to open up. So which meant that, we could interplay. When we became a private university, we said, now we can play the game of the natural sciences and the social sciences to work together. So in the natural sciences, we said, why not look at the interdisciplinary interplay? So I think that's when the challenges came across within us, and we said, all right, now it's an interesting point. We don't have to be evaluated by a central university. So we could look across, now bringing in flexibility in our curriculum, flexibility in the program over there, and bring in this ideation among young people. You know, it is said that, you know, in the world of technology, if you do not succeed by 25, you do not succeed at all. I mean, that's what is disruption on, because we've seen many of the areas which we fail to understand have been disrupted by young people. And Suhash is a classic example who can magnify the power of what the youth could do, because young people can also be leaders. That said, I think that's where the challenge came to us. But then, you know, the challenge was, you know, while across we talk about valuation, we talk about business, you know, one most important aspect what an entrepreneur would need to look across is essentially, you know, how do we create an impact? And we have the likes of Mr. Madan Padki, who's here, you know, who's created great impact among rural students. It's generally believed that all those who go into the IITs and all those who go into the IIMs are brilliant. Yes, book brilliant, yes. But do we need book brilliance for technology? Do we need book brilliance for entrepreneurship? Do we have the resilience to go forward? And that's where we know across there can be a lot more that seen. When it started off, I've been a Chinophile. I have, as a legislator, I first visited China in 1985, and subsequently I must have been to China at least a dozen times trying to follow what China was. In 85, well, I mean, I as an Indian, the first time when I landed into Beijing, I was very, very happy. Then a young man of 25 then, and then, you know, I felt that, you know, India is far ahead, because, you know, China's airport was a very small one, and the road from Beijing, from the airport to the Tiananmen, that's where the central square was a single one-way road, not even a dual carriageway. But then it had the vision to move forward, and it said that, you know, especially when Deng Xiaoping said, you know, it's time for China to become rich. So the idea of a communist country to adapt certain relaxed measures in terms of industry helped it to move forward. And I think we also had this, you know, move one step forward and one step backward. This was something which was a problem for all of us. But I think that is now history. You know, you have an active government, and the government is very, very keen. It understands the importance of startups. It understands the importance of entrepreneurship. It understands that, yes, we can scale, and we can move on to, you know, set up great institutions. While, you know, one of the best things that happened to the state of Karnataka was its leadership in allowing private institutions to come on in this state, which invariably led to a large stock of technologists, a significant stock of people, you know, who had acquired knowledge. They were able to set base. And Bangalore being a wonderful place, because this is where, you know, you don't feel discriminated upon. I mean, everybody is comfortable down here. So you do not have the tensions between language, tension between culture. So this helped the city to create an ecosystem wherein we could have probably one of the finest minds who could be here and then pursue this journey forward. I think that led to, you know, a large number of, you know, when we opened up, you know, in the later part of the 90s, when technology, you know, when the outsourcing mantra was something quite common, when we believed cost arbitraging was something that India could perform and help, you know, Bangalore was able to position itself. But then, you know, like every innovation that happens over there, we move up the ladder. So I think Bangalore was was fortunate enough to have, the eminence of Mr. Vidya Shankar, who as the IT and the BT secretary created an ecosystem for a whole lot of people to come in and pursue their goals, and which ultimately led to a large number of MNC companies to set their research base down here. Now, having said this, I guess, at one end you have got talent that's available within the system, and the other end you have the finesse and the of technology that's available through the MNCs, and also from the fact that the second generation and the third generation of Indians post-independence had greater flexibility within themselves. For a whole lot of people in the early 60s, in the 70s, livelihood was a challenge. For some of them, they had to seek a job, and some of them had to move post their education overseas. But then the current generation did not have these challenges, because they were second generation Indians, which meant that parents were now willing to hold them on for some more time, and probably parents would be able to support them. And the interesting part that happened was this journey that came across was, would a failed entrepreneur be a failure? The answer was no. A failed entrepreneur would still be welcomed by a large organization if he failed, because then he would have the expertise to move forward. And entrepreneurship also became easier because, one, there were a significant amount of mentors which came in from academia, which came in from industry, and they were also what is called as the corporate greed. The corporate greed is something which is very useful and beneficial to promote the spirit of entrepreneurship, because the power of entrepreneurship is so intense that it can disrupt. We are in an age of disruption, which means the technology that we worked on yesterday and the technology that we are working today would have to stand destroyed if something new has to come. And especially in a point of time when we believe that we are entering the age of singularity. We've seen artificial intelligence tools that has come across and how they are making an impact on our lives. And we've seen how, and these are early days of artificial intelligence when we talk of artificial narrow intelligence. We're beginning to enter artificial general intelligence. And soon we will be getting down into artificial superintelligence. Now this is where the challenge that needs to come. So what essentially needs to happen among the entrepreneurial journey is probably map the future. Where would we need to go across, and how do we need to catch up? Now typically, most of the high value startups that we see that's been happening down here has been invariably doing the catch-up. If there's been an Uber in the United States, you have an Ola down here. If you've got an activity down in the United States, we have another startup which comes across and plays the catch-up. Well, this is fine, but we have caught up. It's not too long. Maybe in a decade, we would have caught up with the developed world. We are as good as them because we would be capable of doing as much as them. But the question that happens for us is, would we be able to go beyond that? And that's where we need to go now to be hyper-focused. We need to work on live labs. We need to understand problems. We need to get down into the problem statement. It's not merely from the point of business, but also from the social impact. And this is where I believe the role of the Anand Sagar University would begin to play. Now, one would ask me, when we would talk on to, when in our discussions, especially with Lakshmi, would say, what would Derby need to have its role? We have med schools, we have hospitals, and there are people who need to ideate, and who've got technology that will be on the play. But how do you need to put them across, and how do we need to understand the problem statement? What is it that we need to do? What stage of medicine are we in? In my view and belief, we are in the last days of what we call as the pre-modern era of medicine. The modern era of medicine is yet to begin. Now, what would we mean the modern era of medicine? Invariably, one is an extension of our life, and two, we would want quality life to be in. We need to get down into predictive analytics of our life as such. So we need to figure out, how can we have many of the problems that could emerge out at the embryo, can we stop them? So in essence, as I said, the challenge for us maybe 2 decades from today, when artificial superintelligence would have achieved great degrees, when we would have the ARs and the VRs and, digital transformation being complete, what would we want to do across? Would it be to enhance our own personal lives? And would it mean to enhance the quality of our life and health? And if we need to do that, I guess, we need to get back and try to understand what the challenges that we need to do. And I think that's where, any technology has to impact human life. Commerce, trade, yes, it's going to happen, it's going to make money, you're going to be successful, but the success lies ultimately in the social impact. What is the kind of success that can we do? We are going to be an 8 billion people on this continent. We have challenges that are there. And I think it's not only, the entrepreneurship which gets on into technology. There could be entrepreneurship which could go on in areas which can really bring in an impactful movement of life. And we've seen many of our young entrepreneurs working on many of these things. So I guess, while the strength of India has been in terms of frugal innovation, I always remember the good old days. I'm a product of the 70s. So, the good old days when they would say, in Bata, cheap and best. Bata would be cheap and it would also be best, and that's what frugal innovation talks about. I think while we look across, and this is where India can actually measure up, because what could happen in India could be at the cheapest point. We are able to do that because we believe in this entire thing of not having a lot of waste that would go across. And I think that is the essence of entrepreneurship. And I think most entrepreneurs will have to go across and not be a part of the Western entrepreneurial system where they believe, you spend more and then, you're able to build a great point. Yes, the spin managers have a different game. The so-called, people who would like to create valuation, push the valuation. Now, this is a game that is going to be played. This is a game that will continue to be played because you want to create a valuation, you want to spin it, and then you want to take it out to the street, and then you want to get out of it only for the stock market to collapse. So we find these bubbles that are happening. Well, that happens on one point of the thing, but then what we essentially need to go across is to see the kind of impact that we as entrepreneurs can bring across, and also position the nation at large to see that, the entrepreneurship which is made in India can go on across. We find this to be quite challenging because most times we find, products which are designed, which are developed, and then they come back to us. Why can't we do it the other way? Why can't we design a product for us and make it available for the Western world? Just like the EKG machine, which was designed by GE for India, in India, and then it went on to the rest of the world as such. So the frugal innovation that we have can not only solve many of our problems, our requirements, but also can look at the large part of the world, whether it's Africa, which is going to be a 1 billion, which is currently a 1 billion nation today, and which would probably be which would be about 3 billion in the next 75 years. So can we find solutions? And probably the answer would be yes. I think most of the solutions would be there. Now, to close my interaction today, I would say that the role of an entrepreneur is fraught with many things. You've got to dance with the wolves, walk with the elephants, and ultimately roar with the lions. And I'm sure the entrepreneurs would go on. The entrepreneurs at Derby would begin to do this journey, and I'm sure under the mentorship of Vidya Shankar sir and the energy of Lakshmi Jagannathan, and probably with all the support of all those wonderful people who are here, Derby would have this particular role of supporting a whole lot of people, because that is the essence of us. And that was the belief that my parents did have. The point was, when they came back, my father a barrister at law from the Gray's Inn and a fellow of the Royal College of Economics, and my mother a triple FRCS in the 50s, they had a purpose to come to India, and the purpose was to support the social system, and that's what we believe at Dayanand Sagar institutions. And we believe that we can create something, or we can help create a platform where essentially we can support the system of the entrepreneurial journey. So wish you all the best, Lakshmi, and I'm sure we will have many years of mentorship and guidance from Vidya Shankar sir. Thank you, sir, and thank you all of you.
Thank you, sir. Your inspiring words will definitely motivate us to aim and achieve more. Now I request Dr. Lakshmi Jagannathan, CEO, DERBI Foundation, to propose the vote of thanks.
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think proposing the vote of thanks, there are 3 challenges today, especially if your predecessor has been a powerful orator like Dr. Sagar. That's the first challenge. Second challenge is if there's a good dinner waiting for you, I have to hold on you for another 5 more minutes. That's the second challenge. Third challenge is if the speaker before you is going to read out from a written text the vote of thanks. God only save you all, right? I didn't want to miss out any important people in my thanks. That's the reason I said I will jot it down and read it out for you all. Kindly bear with me. Sometimes it is very tough to take a moment to express how thankful you are for a lot of people who have supported us, a lot of people who have blessed us in this journey so far. Today's vote of thanks, I would say, is broadly on 2 grounds. One for DERBI at 5, which is the event today, and the other for people who made today's evening possible. Let me start with Chirate. Chirate is a tech VC firm and a dream connect for anyone in the startup ecosystem. A big thanks to Mr. Meenakshi Sundaram. TCM has fondly called for taking time off his hectic schedule to be with us today. I would also like to thank him for co-investing in 2 of our portfolio startups and would look forward for many such occasions to thank him again. Thank you so much. Mr. Suhas is not only an old friend, but for inspiration for us, I would say last 1 decade or so. From motivating students, as he said, as the world's youngest entrepreneur, to advising Government of India, he has helped us, mentored us at every stage. Thank you, Mr. Suhas, for everything. As Dr. Sagar was mentioning, it looked like only yesterday when I met him asking for a consent to set up an entrepreneurship cell. It was almost 13 years back. We have come a long, long way. Let me thank you, sir, on my personal behalf and on behalf of Team DERBI, the Dayanand Sagar institutions at large, the chairman, Dr. Hemchandra Sagar, the vice chairman, Dr. Sagar himself, for believing in us and empowering us to grow. Thank you so much, sir. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Rohan Sagar, Director, DERBI Foundation, who is very closely working with us last 1 year plus, for all the support in all our endeavors. Thank you so much. In Indian scriptures, it is aptly said, Daivam Manushya Rupena. God manifests himself in human forms. MNV sir to us is one such manifestation, who's been with us, making things happen for us. Thank you, sir. Today has been possible thanks to the support of many, many people who stood with us. DERBI is a reality today thanks to the continued patronage and support of all the government agencies, both Government of India and Government of Karnataka. Big thanks to DST, MeitY, and Invest India also, who've really financed us, funded us, and also supported us. Our committed advisors are an extended family to us. Some of the members are also here today. Big thanks to Mr. Rajneesh, Mr. J.C. Jitendra Chadha, Dr. Das, Mr. AVR, and also Mr. Samir. I hope Mr. Samir has made it today. Our passionate mentors always realize their dreams when they mentor startups. I would acknowledge some of them who've taken time off to be here with us today. Mr. Ram from Wilgrow, Mr. Ravi Ramaswamy, Mr. Sriram, Dr. Nayanji, Dr. Shyam Vasudev Rao, Shiva Ramurthy, Dr. Chandrika, many others. Though we fuel dreams, investors ignite dreams. Big thanks to all the investors who partnered with us in multiple forms. Co-invested with us, part of the jury, helped us select the startups. We partnered with us when we announced programs in multiple forms. I would say many investors have been a part of our journey. I would acknowledge the presence of multiple investors again, Ankur Capital, Special, W Health Ventures, Indian Angel Network, Social Alpha, Bharat Innovation Fund, Sobus Insight, Angel Adda, and of course, Chirate as well. Our association and deep engagement with corporate houses has brought in a clear differentiation in the way we manage both ourselves and our startups. I think I would add to what Mr. Suhas was mentioning. I think this is one differentiation where DERBI doesn't function as an academic incubator. We are more driven by the corporate culture which corporate houses have brought it to us. Our thanks to all our corporate partners. Some of them are also here. Mouser Electronics, MathWorks, Cisco, Bosch, Applied Materials, Samsung, Intel, and Titan Industries. Big thanks to all of you. A special thanks to all the ecosystem enablers who are present here today. TI Bangalore, NASCOM, IESA, BCIC, Laghu Udyog Bharati, Vadvani Foundation, NU Hospital, OneBridge, Nat Health, Office, and also Sign IIT Bombay. Thanks to all our CSR partners, HDFC Bank, Canara Bank Securities, and our own Sagar hospitals, and also for the continued patronage and support. Our special thanks to CHI, which is an international initiative on social health innovations. This is an opportunity we have trying last 2 years, where we are now trying to leverage international connections to see how innovations in healthcare can also be applied elsewhere in the world as well. Teamwork makes dream work. I must thank Team DERBI for being together and working in unison to realize one milestone after another. In fact, the average age of all the DERBI team is probably half my age. So their energy is what keeps me going. In particular, a big thanks to Mr. Natarajan and Mr. Tony, who played a very key role in what we are today. We only fuel dreams, but the entrepreneurs really slog it out to achieve them. Actually, I think all of us should give 3 cheers to all the startups here and the spirit of their innovation and entrepreneurship. Big thanks to all of you who've come here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for all your guidance, support, and being an inspiring mentor to our DERBI team. Your love, care, and your motivational words keep us moving forward both in personal and professional care. We love you, ma'am. As DERBI clocks 5, it's a significant milestone for us to showcase some of our startups to the ecosystem. Our startups are being showcased outside the hall. I would request all of you, please spend some time visiting the stalls either before or after your dinner. I would also request all of you to kindly collect a copy of the coffee table book, DERBI at 5, before you leave for the dinner. Dinner is being served outside the hall, back of the hall. Coming together is the beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. We look forward to working with all of you to strengthen and build a Atmanirbhar Bharat. Have a great evening. Jai Hind. Thank you.
create videos for your business, with hundreds of templates designed to get them
its quality should be maintained. And our technology supports that. Usually, in the current scenario, end-to-end tracking of a blood bank is very difficult and not achieved. And our technology will be able to support healthcare facilities to monitor their blood bags and closely watch their inventory and make sure that no unsafe blood is reaching to the patients. This is how the technology works. Every blood bag RFID card will be attached, and every refrigerator, our device, blood bag monitoring device, this is an IoT product which will be installed. And whenever any blood bag is going to a refrigerator, it will be scanned and the data will be monitored. And our technology is currently helping many private hospitals as well as public hospitals. In the rural areas, blood should be made available, that also in a quality manner. And our technology is currently supporting in many places in the government and remote locations. And DERBI, how DERBI is supporting? It's 5 years. It's 5 years. Right. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. DERBI portrait. Yeah. Get a separate. That's it. Now can I tell you? Mainly supporting us in terms of our product development and mentoring us for our product certification and going forward for this product ISO certification and CE certification. And thanks for the support from the DERBI and its mentors. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Anish. I am Plaquenil Technologies Private Limited. We are developing the world's first device for measuring heart sounds and lung sounds without any physical contact. DERBI has provided us funds through the Seed Fund India scheme, and also we are incubated at IISc Bangalore. And DERBI in all the in promoting us and giving us good opportunities and funding for developing our product and also getting into the fund. Thank you.
Next second one.
We are getting good feedback from the market right now. We are actually chemical industries and textile industries, and we have been part of those organizations since 2019, and we have implemented at the Derby Foundation. We are presently a team of around 15 members, and we are operating at members.
Hi, I'm Purva Vanuchi, and this is Sagar. Both of us are from and what our company basically focuses on is the production of passive insoles and also active insoles. The passive insoles, as you can see here, are basically produced based on the 3D images that we get of your feet. So it is going to be customized based on your foot. No two people are going to have the same insoles. Further, if you buy a passive insole, you're also going to get a webcam attached with it, based on which you can just walk in front of the webcam and you're going to get a gait analysis every week. So you're going to know every metric that is going on, and active insoles are further going to have an additional chip inserted in them and sensors that are going to be attached with our app, which is the Relive app. We're going to get a continuous visualization of all the metrics so that you can know of ulcer or of diabetic foot even before it happens. And basically you can take charge of your health much more effectively than you do now. And that is the aim, and we are funded by Derby Foundation, and we are people, ISC students, and this is our son. Siddharth is our co-founder.
So hi, we are Ultra Instinct and into smart video analytics. So you might see that we have CCTV cameras all around us, right? But they are no use if they are not giving you real-time insights about the crime. We are generally right now users go back and see what really happened. So using our product, we get real-time insights about what is happening. For example, shoplifting, robbery, or armed robbery, or daylight stealing that happens. And also I want to thank Derby Foundation that they have given us such good opportunity, and they have invested in us and shown their faith.
Can I just see this first? Ashmi will order the food. Yeah, man, will hit. Bolvede heltar. Bolvede bade. Ratish, we are not we are actually the dentist to decide and so what we towards this is about
Photologics are a healthcare venture that uses technology to make speech therapy accessible to children with weak
speech language and communication disorders or delays. So our unique therapy program combines online speech therapy with a digital platform which has a hierarchy of boards and activities which parents can then generate, which ensures faster progress. Through DERBI, we have received the Startup India Seed Fund, which we are utilizing for our product
continuously. And further, we are also in touch with authorities completely ready to answer.
Hi, my name is Sagar and I'm representing a company called Myriad Technologies, and we have this product called re-strategize. Is a kit of modular building blocks. The concept works like any child who plays with plastic building blocks. So now we are providing sort of technology building blocks to the kids. So one is a battery, one is a switch, and these blocks can be connected with each other just like any other plastic building blocks. So you would connect multiple building blocks like this, and within few seconds you would be able to make working circuits out of it. So like this, we have a kit of different 45 different types of blocks. There are variety of sensors, variety of actuators, motors, all of that part of the kit. We provide these kits to the schools as well as to the private organizations who work with the schools. These kits are used for the STEM education at the school, which is called combination of science, technology, engineering and math. We provide the kit, we provide the curriculum which is built around the kit, and we also provide teacher training. A couple of years back we got incubated at DERBI. DERBI has also funded us, and they are providing immense amount of support in terms of mentoring as well as in terms of connect with various educational institutions, etc. Thank you so much.
How many minutes? And I'm the co-founder and CEO of Newfany, and we believe in the unlimited potential of human mind. So we have created Newfany, India's first brain wearable, also known as the smartwatch for your brain. So it analyzes your brain activity and then converts it into a user-understandable format such as stress, focus, calm, and distraction levels. We also tell your mood. So it's not only an analytics tool,
but we also recommend scientifically backed meditation techniques to help you change your brain state so that you are more focused and calm at the same time and a more balanced person. I would really like to thank DERBI Foundation for giving us this platform because they were the first investors who believed in us and gave us the Startup India Seed Fund and helped us actually gain access to awards and other grants as well. So thank you so much.
Hey, hi, I'm Dinesh Manian from Geovia Healthcare. So we are into IoT devices, manufacturing and implementing in rural India. So this is our device. So this device can take 7 vital parameters. So you can take SpO2, you can take ECG, you can take temperature and everything. So a doctor in a backend will be sitting in the metro place, and the woman who in the rural PHCs can be taken 7 vitals at an instant place of time. So that a doctor sitting in a metro can watch their vitals lively. So we have another product which is called Aloe here. So which can be wearable in the hand of a rural woman. So what this device exactly does is it can take all the vitals of a rural woman. It can intimate them when they want to take medicines. It can take their food energy levels, and it can take 3 to 5 vitals. It exactly takes what an Apple Watch can do a functionality is the same of the function of this device. So these both are the devices what we have invented so far. So right now we are working with DERBI for the past 1.5 years. So DERBI really helps us to focus more on the product and the business part of it, and for the partnerships, establishing the partnerships, and more on the tech part. And we really thankful for DERBI for reframing our mission and mission for the organization. Thank you. Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, ready. Start.
Hello, this is Tanu Agarwal, the founder of Suno Kitab, and DERBI Foundation is the one that helps us, and we really appreciate what the kind of mentoring they are providing to us, the support they are giving to us, which is extremely essential for us at this stage in our journey. So yeah, thank you so much for the support and the great parenting, I would say. Thank you so much.
I want to see the clip.
Definitely.
We'll share it.
Forget it. Once you are ready, this is.
I'm ready. Okay, ready, sir. Hi, my name is Dr. Nayanjit. I work for a center called Ramaya International Center for Public Health Innovations, Bangalore. And it's been a privilege to be part of the DERBI Foundation. I congratulate the entire organization, particularly its CEO, Dr. Lakshmi, and all those who are behind enterprise that supports startups in an ecosystem surrounding an academic environment which is very rare in this country. And they've been doing excellent work. I've been privileged to be part of their several programs. I'm a mentor in their incubation system. So, and I've seen excellent work, excellent mentorship, great funding support, and in 5 years what they have achieved, if they can really teach the rest of the country, it would be a great honor for. So I wish them all the very best and happy to be part of their team. Once again, congratulations. Check. We were in the call of things from